Welcome to episode 14. Apply the customized approach correctly from start to finish. Today's aim is to give a safe, step-by-step way to design and defend alternative controls that still meet the payment card industry data security standard, PCI DSS, intent and produce evidence an assessor can trust. A well-built customized approach does not bend rules. It reaches the same objective through a design that fits the technology and operating realities in front of the team. The difference between success and stress is not clever writing, but clear intent, measurable results, and artifacts that show the control working over time. When those pieces are present, the customized approach becomes a legitimate path that reduces risk and passes review without drama. When they are missing, it becomes a fragile story that collapses under basic sampling. Mapping the design to requirement intent comes next, and it must read as logic, not poetry. The requirement's verbs matter because they hint at the kinds of proof expected. Install, configure, restrict, monitor, review, and respond each carry a trail of evidence. The design should trace a line from each verb to an equivalent action in the alternative control, then point to where that action leaves artifacts that can be sampled. If the objective is to prevent unauthorized administrative changes, the map might show how just-in-time elevation, short-lived credentials, and session recording deliver the same prevention and visibility as a traditional static approval model. If the objective is to ensure only trusted code executes in a browser context, the map might show how integrity policies and continuous verification produce the same safeguard as an older, heavier approach. Good maps do not promise more, they prove equivalence in outcome. Process, roles, and tools deserve the same concreteness because reproducibility is part of the standard's DNA. The customized approach should read like a compact operating standard rather than a proposal. Who requests access, who approves, who configures, who monitors, what tool enforces, what log records, what report is reviewed, and which thresholds trigger response. Named roles matter more than job titles because roles cross teams during holidays and after reorganizations. Tools should be pinned to versions and configurations the program actually runs, not marketing names with implied features. Procedures should include the inputs, the steps, and the evidence generated at each step in actor, action, outcome sentences that a new hire could follow. The litmus test is simple. A different team should be able to rebuild the control from the document without calling the authors for missing steps. Dependencies and failure modes must be named before the pilot, or the pilot will quietly hide them. Dependencies include people, platforms, third-party services, identity systems, time sources, and any integration that feeds data into decision points. Failure modes include outages, misconfigurations, stale identities, missing logs, and blind spots introduced by convenience. The design should acknowledge which dependencies are single points, which have redundancy, and which need a fallback control when the primary tool is down. It should also state what happens to the business when the control fails because resilience is part of adequacy. This is not pessimism. It is engineering honesty that prevents surprises during assessment. The assessor's lens always asks what breaks first and how anyone would know. Piloting the approach in a limited scope is the safest way to replace theory with behavior. A pilot should target a slice of the environment large enough to show normal variation but small enough to manage noise, such as one region, one application tier, or a defined merchant channel. The team runs the control with real users and real data, collects the planned metrics, and keeps a running log of qualitative observations that explain friction and unexpected outcomes. They test detection and response paths with 1 or 2 controlled failure injections and capture the trace from event to action to closure. Most importantly, they save the messy parts, the first days when numbers wobble and habits resist, because those artifacts prove this control had to earn its place. A pilot is not a polished demo. It is a short, truthful history of a control learning to live. No pilot is perfect, which is why the method must include gaps, enhancements, and layers. When metrics miss targets or blind spots appear, the team writes a small gap card that names the weakness, the proposed enhancement, the expected metric lift, and the date the change will land. Some gaps demand a layered control that sits beside the primary design and watches from another angle, like a secondary alert on a different data source or a periodic manual sample by a team that is not part of daily operations. Acceptance thresholds are adjusted only with a written, targeted risk analysis that states why the revised standard still meets the objective and how the program will validate it over time. This discipline proves that flexibility lives inside a governed lane rather than in the mood of the moment. An assessor-facing narrative ties intent, design, tests, and outcomes into a single flow that reads like an investigation, not a brochure. It opens with the requirement's objective and the risk it addresses in this environment, then explains in plain words how the alternative reaches the same safety. It names the metrics and the monitoring cadence, shows baseline and pilot results in dated artifacts, and includes one short scenario narrative that traces a blocked attempt from signal to action. It states residual risks that remain, the layers that guard those edges, and the escalation that keeps the control honest. It ends with a clear pointer to where evidence lives and who owns it when the reporting period closes. Good narratives shorten interviews because they answer the next question before it is asked. Change management is not a footnote. It is the fence that keeps a customized approach from drifting away from its original intent. The design should define what kinds of changes require a formal review tool, versions, policy logic, identity paths, data sources, thresholds, and what evidence must be captured when those changes occur. It should tie changes to approvals with named approvers, require a quick post-change validation that the metrics survived, and demand a visible rollback plan when risk rises. Drift tends to appear when a helpful engineer makes an exception for a single case and no one records it. A strong change rule keeps exceptions visible and time-boxed. An assessor does not need perfection. They need proof that the program knew it moved and knew it still met the objective after it moved. Reporting artifacts must align to the Attestation of Compliance, AOC, and the Report on Compliance, ROC, so the customized approach can ride standard processes without special pleading. That means evidence folders labeled to the matching requirement number, dated samples that show operation during the period, and a short cover note that states method and outcome in neutral words. It means reconciliations that map inherited responsibilities from providers to local responsibilities at the edge of the control, so no one assumes coverage that does not exist. It means segmentation and identity evidence that shows this control lives inside a boundary that preserves its assumptions. Above all, it means the alternative is visible in the same structure as classic controls because assessment templates will not bend. The fastest way to win is to fit the shape reviewers already use. Periodic revalidation keeps effectiveness current as environments and threats change. Revalidation is not busy work. It is a planned, small rerun of the original test logic with updated samples and a quick comparison to prior results. It can be quarterly for fast-moving controls, semi-annual for stable ones, and annual at minimum, with a written rule that raises the cadence after major changes or incidents. Revalidation should include a short written observation on whether the control still meets the objective under today's workload and whether the metrics still predict safety accurately. If drift is detected, the program opens a small improvement card with a date and an owner and closes it with a retest artifact. This rhythm proves that the customized approach stayed alive rather than becoming a frozen snapshot from last year's project. Integrity also comes from the way the team speaks about the design. Descriptions should favor actor, action, outcome phrasing over magic words, because real controls name who did what and what changed. Timelines should record time sources, system identifiers, and user identities, so events are traceable without guesswork. Decisions should be dated and signed by named roles, not by empty groups, because accountability is part of assurance. When a customer or assessor asks how the control can be trusted, the team should be able to open one folder and walk from the objective to the evidence without hand-waving. The tone stays calm because the facts carry the story. The customized approach has a special power when it helps teams retire fragile legacy patterns while preserving security outcomes. It can replace sprawling static allow lists with behavior-based approvals that leave a better trail and give users fewer permanent privileges. It can shift from brittle page lockdowns to modern page integrity that notices when scripts change and proves that the payment field stayed untampered. It can move from scattered manual checks to event-driven reviews that trigger on meaningful signals and record decisions at the moment they matter. These moves reduce operational fatigue and produce richer artifacts, which is exactly what assessment programs want. The key is to prove that the new design did not lower the bar, it raised it where it counts. Cloud and platform shifts invite custom designs, and the same discipline applies. Account boundaries, identity planes, and policy as code can meet objectives with fewer moving parts than older models, but only when identity proofs, route controls, and logging produce sample-ready evidence. A customized approach that relies on short-lived cloud roles must show the broker, the factor, the approval, and the session record without gaps. One that relies on managed integration points must show route rules, private endpoints, and flow logs that keep payment data off public paths. The assessor's question never changes. Does the design meet the intent, reduce the risk, and leave evidence? When the answer is yes with artifacts, the platform choice becomes a detail, not a hurdle. The last mile is a one-page intent-to-evidence map for the chosen requirement, and it is both a planning tool and a rehearsal for assessment. The page names the objective in one sentence, states the risk in one sentence, and describes the alternative in two sentences that make no promises they cannot keep. It lists the success metrics and cadence in a short paragraph, the roles and tools in another, and the primary and secondary evidence locations with dates and owners in a third. It adds one scenario line that a reviewer can follow, such as a blocked unauthorized change or a verified untampered page during checkout, and it closes with the change rule that keeps the control from drifting. This page becomes the front cover of the evidence folder and the script for the walkthrough. When it reads cleanly, the rest of the packet tends to follow. We will close by asking for that one page today. Pick a single requirement where a customized approach would add clarity or remove friction without lowering safety. Write the objective, the risk, and the outcome in clean sentences. Then trace the design to metrics, cadence, roles, tools, evidence, and change rules that hold the line. Speak the page aloud once this evening and once in the morning, and fix any line that still sounds like a slowdown. The customized approach is not a shortcut. It is a disciplined way to reach the same destination with a route that fits the road you are on. When intent maps to evidence through metrics and honest tests, it earns trust on paper and in production. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.